former Royal Marines Commando from Devon has tonight reached Land's End after running all the way from John O'Groats. Chris Thrall has run an ultramarathon every day since the 1st of September and has made the 999-mile journey to raise money for a veterans charity. Spotlight's Andrea Ormsby saw him cross the finish line. He's explored 80 countries on 7 continents, backpacked through North, South and Central America, caught piranhas in the Amazon, swum with bull sharks in Belize and holds a world record for firewalking. This is Chris Thrall's latest adventure.
Yeah, it's up there with the rest of them. I've been lucky over the years to, try my hand at a lot of different adventures. I've been scuba diving in the Antarctic, fly planes, jump out of them, and of course I joined the Marines when I was 18.
Chris has done 37 ultramarathons every day from John O'Groats to Land's End to raise money for a charity which is close to his heart.
Words fail. I mean, to do what he's done has been incredible, and the condition his body's in, because he's got wrecked knees, other problems that we all know about. And you just run out of words to describe how much you admire his effort, how much it means to so many people, because he's inspiring a lot of people who are in the same boat, PTSD.
Life for Chris became very hard after he left the Royal Marines.
I mean, I didn't know what depression was, and I found it really hard to interact with professionals because they didn't really understand the mindset of a serviceman.
He's done it. A warm welcome back and around £15,000 raised to help other veterans in need. Andrea Ormsby, BBC Spotlight, Land's End.
Robin, how are you, sir?
What you want to feed me, I'll eat it.
Okay, I think we're there. Good evening, everybody. I hope this finds you all well. Apologies there, we probably trebled or doubled up on some of the montage introduction, but as I said, it's still early days with the podcast. I'm Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando turned author, adventurer, charity type guy, and do a bit of life coaching. It is my great delight to welcome back to the podcast Robin Horsfall, former SAS trooper, was involved in the infamous Iranian embassy siege and has done a whole lot of other stuff like many of us with his life. So Robin, how are you, sir?
Hi Chris, good evening. Nice to be here.
Yes, it's nice to see you again. How was the did you get any feedback from our podcast?
Yeah, I had some great feedback from it. A lot of people came up on my web pages and on my Facebook and said that they got an awful lot from it. Very supportive, nothing negative. That was very encouraging. It's always good to have nice feedback from people. You do always notice the abuse, but you don't. It's nice to get the good stuff as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Oh, hang on. For some reason I've bear with me a second.
You're still live.
Yeah, well that's good. We'll be live for about 5 seconds because of the
delay.
Yeah, because of the delay. So bear with us, folks. Dun, dun, dun. Closing some tabs down here. Yes, hello again, friends. Sorry, we had a bit of interruption there. seems to happen on every live show that we do, and I'll be honest, it's not always my fault. It's not a bootneck in technology. It's generally that they release all this technology so quickly these days that it's not always glitch free. So I think we're here now. So yes, good feedback on the podcast, Robin. We got which wasn't a surprise to me, to be honest. We got thousands upon thousands of views, and it's quite amazing, really, to think that almost 70,000 people have watched our chat and the clips that I put out, which is that would fill a few football stadiums, wouldn't it?
At least one.
Yeah. Well, if it was Plymouth Argyle, it would fill quite a few. So, how's life treating you? How's the Northern Ireland Veterans campaign going? I saw a couple of posts from you there. Yeah,
I've been putting some material up about it. COVID-19 has taken an awful lot of the wind out by everybody's sails this year. And, so even with protest movements, it's very hard to keep that momentum going. So we've been working behind the scenes. We've been raising some funds. We've been looking forward to next year when the court cases come up again, and trying to keep people buzzing on the same subject. If people don't hear from you, if they don't know what's going on, then they get bored, then they wander off onto other things. So it's important for the veterans that support us about the Northern Ireland persecutions that they know that we're still active, we're still working hard. We've been in Parliament on the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, and we're planning to get everybody back out marching next year, fighting in the House, and keeping the pressure on. But at the moment, it's the wisest thing to do not to gather in huge crowds, as we all know. So, we're using this time. We're using this time effectively. That's all I can really say.
Brilliant. And did the podcast and its feedback, did that bring back any sort of fresh memories, or did you go over the ones that you had?
No, not so much that. I got messages by people on LinkedIn and by people on Facebook and through my web pages, and they were pretty much saying how much they enjoyed it, and I didn't realise that we went on for 3 hours. So the people to actually listen to you and I having the discussion for 3 hours, that's quite encouraging. I do often put myself out there as the veterans gobshite, because shutting me up's the big problem, and knowing what the time is, but we did really well, didn't we? I think we did really well.
Yeah, I think it was excellent, and a few points kept coming up, and one of them was the honesty. I think in this day and age of false celebrity and politicians' lies and the social media of everyone trying to pretend that there's somebody that they're not, I think the people out there just appreciate people that cut through the bullshit and are just willing to kind of put their egos at bay and just say it how it is.
There's a big difference between cutting through the bullshit and actually being open and honest about yourself and about your experiences and your mess ups and so on. Some people regard cutting through the bullshit as being aggressive and in somebody's face, and that's not the same thing at all. Cutting through the nonsense is really just accepting that you're a fairly ordinary human being and you do make mistakes, and when people see it, then they usually recognize it, because there's something in people's body language that shows that it's an act or it's a lie, and they figure you out, or a large percentage of them figure you out, and it doesn't do you any favors in the long term. It might sell a few books in the short term, but it doesn't do you any good in the long term.
No, that's right. And the whole book thing, I will be careful what we say here, because I don't want to single out any individuals, but it is as an author myself, it's quite hard when you hear these gushing reviews of somebody's book, when you just know, because you're on the inside, that a lot of it's fabrication. But you yourself wrote a book that was just bloody honest, and you put yourself on the line, and you put yourself out there, hopefully to empower other individuals to either not make your mistakes or to make them, but to learn by them. And you get some scathing Amazon review that, or you get some say this is a load of shit. it's like, and then they go, but you should read this book by so and so, and you're like, no, in fact,
yeah, Chris, there's 70,000 people out there that, you know.
There you go. Look, there's Robin's book, folks.
That's my first blog.
Fighting Scared, and you know, with a name like that, you kind of already know it's going to be from a humble perspective. One thing I get is, you should read Shantaram, and I say, yes, but it's fiction. My book is a memoir. Shantaram they tried to release it as a memoir, and then because people poked so many holes in it, the publisher then released it, and it's got fiction written on the back now. No disrespect to, I think it's Gregory David Roberts. I think from what I can tell, he's an awesome guy. But it's yes, the whole world of writing it can conjure up a certain amount of issues and emotional.
Writing a novel is hard work. I mean, it's the great challenge for any writer, because you have to invent everything. You have to invent the characters, you have to invent the scenes, you have to invent the whole thing. You have to build it like a detective story, you know, and remember where everybody is and how old they are, and, you know, whether they had a beard or blue eyes right the way through the story. So it's a real challenge, and, you know, I'm trying hard to work on one at the moment. Yeah. And there's another one. Hang on. That's yours. I get the next one.
Yes, no. That was my first novel, The Drift.
Yeah.
And I took a bit of a unique angle, Robin, because I didn't want your cliche, you know, dashing SAS hero that everything's about a 9mm and a this and a that and I wanted it about, no, I wanted a guy that he likes his rum, he loves his daughter. And it's almost like it's well, I should explain. Hans Larsson, my protagonist, is a former Navy SEAL, because I wanted to obviously have that 3 degrees of separation or whatever. And yeah, so I wrote quite an honest character, quite a people orientated character. All the dits in it are actually real, pretty much 75% is real stuff that's either happened to me or people that I know through the military, or stories I've heard about the SAS, say, down there in Sierra Leone. But it's a tough old audience to please out there sometimes.
Well, as I say, you know, a lot of people will enjoy a book and won't write. It's a bit like, you know, you go in hospital, the doctor cures you, and you go home. You don't think, I'm going to go back and thank the doctor. But if a doctor cuts off the wrong leg, then you're really upset, and you make a point of letting him know. So a lot of stuff that you get as feedback, you know, it's going to be the people that aren't happy rather than the people that are. But the book sales tell the story, don't they? They really do.
They do, and also your overall rating. So you got your 5 stars, and they normally, your 5th star is sort of graded down depending on whether you're a 4.3 or a 4.5. Or I think my first novel slipped down to a 3.75 or something.
Ah.
But the second one, I nailed it. I just, you know, in yourself when you've nailed something, and it was just good. It was it's a really good follow up. It's actually a series. I think as an author, you have to be able to say it's really good and blow your own trumpet, because if you can't tell a book's good, you're going to struggle to write good books. You've got to feel, it's intrinsic. You feel when it's good, right?
Yeah, unless you've got a marketing company, nobody's going to blow your trumpet for you. You've got to go out there every day and put something out there, and you know, somebody's going to have a look, somebody's going to read it, somebody's going to hear about it. And you know, it's not I find, you know, I can sit down and write a short story, or write an anthology of short stories. And, you know, that's not difficult. I tell you what's always difficult is the marketing. That's the hard work. It really is.
Yeah, and it probably would surprise people to know, Robin, wouldn't it, that even the big companies don't really do any marketing for you.
Nope.
In fact, what they actually do is they will take on, say, 2,000 books a year, but they know 5 or 10 of those books are going to make the company its huge profits. You know, these are kind of your, you know, your best sellers, and the other ones, it's just part of the trade. They almost let them die. They, you know, you never know which one is going to flick up. You know, a bit like J.K. Rowling or whatever, and just make millions. Millions upon millions for the publisher, and they obviously don't tell the authors that the rest of them are just going to die. It's a sad part of the industry, hey?
There's a question up here, Chris. It says about have defence cuts affected the special forces in terms of recruitment? Should we have a look at that?
Yes. Robin, can I just jump in? There's one thing I needed to say, and that is a massive thank you to Brooke Benson. Brooke's there taking charge of our chat tonight. Brooke, lovely dear man. He's helped me out no end on the channel, and today he spent 2 hours going through all the technology we're using now. We had about 6 computers on in total, and he was very patient with me, and we went through every single part of this. There's like 3 software systems running at the minute, and Brooke, much love to you, mate. Thank you so much. If it wasn't for people like Brooke, I wouldn't be as doing as well as we are now. So, yes, Robin, over to you.
Yeah, as I say, again, the question was, have defence cuts affected special forces? And I'm sure that they have. I mean, when I served with the British Armed Forces, there were 150,000 men in the British Army. You know, not the Navy, not the Air Force, just the British Army. And now we're down to somewhere in the region of 75,000, and they're talking about cutting it even further. Well, when you've got 150,000 as a seed pool to fill a special forces unit of 250 men, then you know you can be extraordinarily selective. When you cut that by 2/3, you know you've got a much smaller seed pool, so it's much harder to actually find the people that will meet the specifications to get in there. So I think it has changed a lot. It's also changed a lot because special forces, by the very fact that it exists, means small. As soon as it becomes big, it's no longer special. That's a simple fact of life. And when I was in the SAS between, when was it, 78 and 84, there were 250 badge soldiers and about another 250 to 300 support arms. Now there's still about 250 badge soldiers with about 2,000 support arms. So that's changed a great deal. And the government are saying, oh, we're putting money into special forces. We're putting money into special forces. But then they're taking it away from the standard Green Army. They're cutting back the infantry. They're cutting back the artillery. They're cutting back the armored units. And so consequently, they're not helping special forces at all. It's just a publicity stunt because people think they know something about special forces. And if they're putting money into it, that's great. But it's not. It's much better to put it into the Green Army that special forces are selected from. So I think it has. I don't think the people are any worse or better. I think the selection process is very, very similar, and the demands are just as high. But it's much, much harder to maintain those numbers because the army in general, the armed forces in general, are getting smaller.
What do we think, Robin, about the was it the snowflake recruiting advertising campaign?
Yeah, I mean they put it out to these modern marketing companies, and they get it all wrong because they don't understand the mind of a young man who wants to be a soldier. A young man wants to be a soldier. His primary concern is not pay. His primary concern is to be a tough guy, be a soldier, have adventures, travel around the world, maybe learn skills, maybe get an engine, maybe get a skill as an engineer or a medic or whatever it is. But he's not looking at, oh, you know, I'm more likely to join if I get an extra 20 quid a week. He's looking for that. He's looking to fill his youth up with fun and adventure and mates. And if he has to go to war, then that's part of the job. When you go out there and you start saying to people, oh, it's all right to cry and it's all right to be upset and it's all right and we're going to look after you. You know, I mean, it just goes good. For me, it's just if the people you are going to get from that advertising are not going to make decent soldiers. That's my opinion, and I stand by it firmly. You want soldiers. Soldiers aren't nice people always. Some of them, and you will have had this experience as well, some of them are really nasty, mean, horrible individuals, but they make bloody good soldiers when there's a fight on. What do you want in a fight? Do you want somebody to wave the yellow card and say, sorry, chaps, you're shouting too loud? Or do you want somebody who's going to get his gun out and start shooting the enemy? It's a nasty business, and it needs some pretty nasty people to do it. And they got it completely wrong, and they still don't have it right, to be fair.
Yes. Let's have a look at some more questions. Guys, can we stay away from the personal questions or commenting on other service personnel, because it's not really what my channel's about, and I know Robin's a gentleman, so it won't be what he's about. Did you ever serve with Dinger? The Dinger as in was in Bravo 20.
Well, everybody in the armed forces whose surname was Bell was given the nickname Dinger, just like everybody called Murphy was called Spud. So I knew some guys whose surnames were Bell, but I don't know if the Bell that I knew in the SAS was the same one as was on Bravo 20. So no is essentially the short answer to the question.
Okay, quick question for me from David Baker. Hello, David. And sorry, that last question was from Danny Young. Thank you, Danny. David says, Chris, what do you see for the future of Hong Kong? I see Hong Kong is controlled by the same sociopaths that control the planet. So it's not, unless we stand up and stand firm and start getting united against what I call all this nonsense, then the planet will keep spinning, but humanity's not really going anywhere. David, sorry if I sound a bit pessimistic. I'm more trying to wake people up.
Yeah. That's an interesting question in many ways, because I understand his frustrations about Hong Kong, but we handed over control of Hong Kong something like 25 years ago now, and I remember it. And essentially, Britain is no longer a world power. It's still a world economy, but it's not a world power. We don't have armed forces. We don't have international naval power. And we rely on our alliances with the USA, with Canada, with Europe, and Australia and New Zealand, and other places in the world to have any kind of influence at all. So as far as Hong Kong's concerned, yes, China is pushing the boundaries. It's pushing its boundaries in India, in Turkmenistan, and in Hong Kong, and in the South China Sea, to see if the world will actually push back. And the Western liberal democracies of the world are in something of a crisis, because there's been a lack of leadership over the last 3.5 years, and consequently they're not united. So China will push the boundaries, as Russia will. If we get that kind of leadership back in the near future, then I think that we'll be able to push back and pressure the Chinese Republic and Russia and put them back in their safe box and spread the decency that comes from our particular systems. but we're not a world power anymore. We don't have a big say. We don't have a big drum to beat. Those years are over. We need our alliances. We need our friends around the world. We need NATO. We need the United Nations, and we need diplomacy, and we need good diplomats. We don't need people put in there because they're somebody's best friend who gave them a lot of money. Because diplomacy works if it's done properly.
Yes. Sorry, I would say I'm a typical bootneck, but it's not. I think I'm a typical man. I have trouble multitasking. My girlfriend will tell you about that. It might sound like I'm being rude. It's just I have trouble reading questions and listening to my guests at the same time. I will get better. So let's go right back up to the top. Thanks for hosting this, Chris. This is from Rob Time. Hiya, Rob. My question is how... Oh, we've done that one, haven't we? The defence cuts. I'm not going to take the one on Northern Ireland, Rob, because I think we covered that in our podcast.
We do talk a lot about Northern Ireland, yeah. Yeah,
we do, and to be honest, it's not that I shy away from saying what I feel, because what I ever say is only aimed towards peace anyway, so I'm never going to feel guilty about that. But what I will say about, as soon as you mention Northern Ireland, you can't even call it Ireland or whatever way you try and phrase things, you get someone who gets really upset with you. And
well, it's a quagmire of politics. You do the same if you talk about Israel. You get exactly the same response. Somebody will pounce on a word or a mispronunciation or something, but that's why we're here. We'll make mistakes, and people will be free to correct us.
Robin, was there any specific kind of watch issue to you in the SCS? We had we had a period where our SBS were issued Rolexes. I think that's where the question might be coming from. This is from Joe, by the way. Joe plays 22. Was there a special watch for the siege or for the Falklands? I'm guessing the last bit is a bit irrelevant, but
I think I've lost you for a moment.
Oh, can you hear me now? Bear with us.
You're back now. Yeah, you had a question about watches we were wearing.
Did you have any kind of James Bond type gizmo?
We didn't have a James Bond watch, but it was the first time in the army when I went there that I was actually issued with a watch, and it was a standard army. It was a standard army issue that was issued to special forces. Black face, luminous dials. I don't remember the name of it. Webbing strap for the wrist, and we were. I mean, I was 21. And it was we were quite chuffed with them. I understand they're in great demand these days. Wish I kept it.
Yeah, we just used to call it a pusser's watch in the military. You could go to the store and draw one out. That had a grey sort of khaki strap on it. And if I'll tell you a very quick story, everybody. When I was in training. We were up on Woodbury Common on Limpstone. We were doing our fieldcraft phase, so we were all camouflaged out, and we were doing a lot of night navixes, so navigating at night. And as anyone who's been in the military will tell you, your training team is always watching, right? We came back on the last leg of this night navix. I don't know, like a 3-mile leg back to our harbour position. And as we came down this track, I glanced in the gorse bush, and I saw the luminous dial of a pusser's watch. You couldn't miss it. It was almost as if someone was shining a green torch out of the bush. Yeah. And I thought, should I say, "Good evening, Corporal"? But I didn't have the balls, so I just carried it.
I remember Woodbury Common with the gorse bushes out there, and it's something special about the gorse bushes out there on the common. You've got a lot of spikes in you. They ulcerated. So when I was on the sniper course down there with the Royal Marines, you had to have orthopedic felt down the inside of your ghillie suits to stop you ending up with what was called Woodbury common rash.
Yeah, that was horrible, wasn't it? It was kind of like this poisonous infection.
Yeah.
And there was talk that at one time they used to test chemical weapons up there. In fact, they had a few strange buildings. They had a name for them. I can't remember now. If anyone in the chat knows, please write it down. They had this, like, something houses or something, where they reckon they used to test all kind of hideous chemicals up there, and this had got into the ground. Hence why when you got scratched by this stuff, it could come up nasty. But it probably was just an infection, to be honest.
It was worse because, I mean, we used to have gorse bushes all over the UK, still do. But that was the only place that you got that rash. So it may well have been those chemicals, yeah.
Can you tell us about the sniper's course? Because it's...
Oh, yeah, that was amazing. I got back from the Falklands and my wife had just had our first son, Alex. He was 10 days old when I got home. And I thought, great, I'm going to have some time with my new baby and spend some time with my wife, and things are going to be cool. And then so they sent me on the Royal Marine Sniper course down at Linstead instead. And it was the most amazing soldiers course I ever did. It was fieldcraft to the ultimate degree, and there was no margin for error. You either got, I think it was 65% of everything to get a pass as a sniper, and 75% of everything to get a pass as a marksman sniper. And if you were a quarter point down on any subject below 65%, you failed. That was it. And I think it was a 12-week course. And my wife got ill halfway through. And so I had to go home for a week, take a week off the course, and then come back and catch up. But I caught up, and I did pass with sniper marksman, one of only two that passed with sniper marksman, and I was extraordinarily proud of that. So proud of it, in fact, that I went out with the booties at the end of the course down into Lympstone, and it was the only time in my life I ever did a Zulu warrior in the pub, stark naked, dancing around the pub. The only time in my life I was that chuffed. It was such a hard course, such a skillful course with such great guys. There were only 2 SAS guys on it. The rest were SB and Royal Marines, and they were brilliant guys to work with. I came away from it. I had friends who'd been in the Royal Marines. One of my best friends during selections, a guy called Keith Ball, who's still a friend today, who did and passed selection with me. One of my best corporals, a guy called Neil Gibson, who's quite famous in the Royal Marines. But to work with them in that environment gave me a huge amount of respect for them. They're terrific guys, terrific soldiers. I got on really well with them, especially for a paratrooper.
Yeah, the fieldcraft element is really important, isn't it, for a sniper? Obviously the camouflage and concealment. There was a story when I was in this, and this is not like sour grapes or one regiment picking on another, but they did say they had a trooper rock up one day for the course, and he failed it. So he did all right, and he got all his snipes in and everything, but I think they failed him because he was reluctant to camouflage out fully.
Really?
I'm not saying it's true at all. It was just I'm just saying it, really.
I mean, the skills there are camouflage and concealment, judging distance, observation. That was the toughest one. Observation. They'll take tiny little pieces of Russian equipment, stick it out there anything between 50 and 200 meters away, and you get a pair of binoculars, and you have to identify exactly what it is. You can't just say, oh, there's a rifle magazine out there. You have to say it's a rifle magazine that belongs to this specific weapon and carries this type of ammunition. That was one of the hardest tests for me personally. Then you have stalking, then you have map reading. You have to do everything down to 4 digits rather than 3. So you're basically doing your map reading down to a distance of 10 meters. So there's so much to it over such a protracted period of time, and it really improves you as an individual and as a soldier. But it's the best, and the Royal Marines have run that course since the First World War and never let it go, and they should never let it go.
Yes, well said. I saw a question here, Robin. Can I just apologise, guys? I've just realised the cursor is going all over, the mouse is going all over the thing, and I know it annoys some people. I think there's a way I can turn that off, but I don't want to go and try and do it now because, let's just say it could be index. So just yeah. I'll try and keep it at the edge of the screen.
It works, don't fix it.
Yes. There's a question here, and I absolutely love it. David Baker, well done, mate. He says, hello, guys. What's worse, physical pain or mental pain?
Oh, well, I think they're both equal in different ways. When you're undergoing physical pain, you have to deal with that. When you're undergoing mental pain, you have to deal with that as well. So, I think one of the great skills that you learn as a soldier is endurance and also self-reliance. So when things are going wrong mentally, that's because you're not calm enough. Your imagination's running wild. Fear is actually an anticipation of something bad that might happen in the future. So, if you accept that, you control it. Mental abuse is a different thing altogether if you can't escape from it. Learning how to stand up for yourself, how to fight back, how to articulate well. These are all defenses against a mental assault. But a physical assault, you make yourself stronger, you make yourself fitter, or you run away from it.
Yes. The other thing is it all rolls into one, Robin, doesn't it? When you're absolutely on an endurance challenge and you everything is in pain. It's just everything is in pain, and it's that. Yeah. That's.
There's one thing in fighting scared, where I'm on selection and it's the winter, and we're coming to the end of a 27 mile march with 50 pounds on your back, and you're going up the back of Penavan, which is the highest mountain in the Brecon Beacons, in the dark, and I'm absolutely on my chin straps. There's about 6 inches of snow on the ground as well, and as I'm going up from Critic, which is the mountain just before it, I start to count my steps. So I count into 50. And by the time I'm about 50 meters from the top, I'm counting my steps in 5s. So I'm doing 5 steps, pause. Now I'll do another 5. 5 steps, pause. And that was my challenge. Give myself 50 steps. When I get to 50, I'll stop and have a rest. And now I got down to 5 and I finally got over the top. That was one little way of keeping going. Even if it was, I'm going to do one more step. Now I'm going to rest. Now I'm going to do one more step. That's real endurance, keeping going, ignoring the pain in your body. Your body can do amazing things if you just feed it fuel. And one of the biggest problems people have with endurance, they don't eat enough. If you're ever on any kind of super marathon, super test, anything really physical, stop worrying about your waistline and start filling your belly. Now, that's what really works.
Well said. We've got Lewis in the chat. Lewis, hello, mate. I believe Lewis Hardiman, I believe it was Lewis, has emailed me to say, Chris, I want to do a charity challenge for a veterans charity. How do I go about it? I think, Lewis, I mailed you back. It's really simple, mate. You start a Just Giving page or whatever and get your nice little banner photo. You start a Facebook group so that people in the group can add other people to the group. You decide what challenge, then you go and smash it. It really is that simple, and you don't take any prisoners, and you don't stop, and you just do it.
Yep, I did that just recently. I've been raising some money on a GoFundMe page for it's called the Northern Ireland Veterans Campaign Fund, and we're putting. I said we're getting together for next year, so we're putting some funds together so that we can cover our expenses for meetings, getting around the country, doing some marketing and promotions for the organisation to get it ready to go next year. The links will be up, I'm sure, at the end. And, but it is very, very simple to do. Just GoFundMe, put that into Google, and the page will come up, and the instructions are dead easy to run. Contact the charity you're working for first. That'll help.
Yes. I think a lot of these things, there's a time, guys, you just got to stop asking other people stuff and just crack on and believe in yourself. I get asked an awful lot through things like Instagram. Well, Chris, I want to join the Marines. What should I do? I'd just say go and smash it. Well, first of all, find out from the recruitment office what they're going to want you to do, because that 3-day PRC, or PRMC as they call it now, it's a set criteria. It's like 50 push-ups, mile and a half run in under 10 minutes or something, or it might be 12. You've got to be able to swim, and that's it. And that's it. You just got to make sure you're fit enough to do it. I wouldn't want to turn up there if I wasn't fit enough, but then I did, because I did about 4 4-mile runs before I joined the Marines, and it's probably why I struggled so much.
One of the things that always bugs me about modern day recruitment, which we've already mentioned, is that they never make it absolutely clear to people who want to join the armed forces that part of their job is to get shot at and killed, and I think they should make people more aware of that, because although it doesn't happen to a huge percentage of us, that is part of the job. And it's quite shocking when people come along and say, nobody told me that I was going to be doing this, when you end up in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Falklands and Northern Ireland. Yeah, nobody told me I was going to be doing this. Well, that's maybe they should make it a little clearer that being a soldier is about not just about shooting other people, but about getting shot yourself.
Yes, exactly. And then when the rounds do come down, that's a whole nother thing again, because let's be honest, that's the first, you can't practice that in training, can you?
No. Especially the big ones.
Yes. Yes. Gosh.
I got hit by Katyusha rockets when I was in Mozambique, working as a mercenary, and after they're very, very big, powerful rockets, big artillery, the biggest artillery we had over there actually. But after the attack was over, we discovered that they were our own Katyushas, because the enemy didn't have them. So we'd been fired on by our own Katyusha rockets. Not a great experience. It's funny, your eyes get much, much bigger and your arse gets much, much smaller.
Did you ever meet Kate Adie then, Robin? Was that?
Yeah. I met Kate Adie. I've got some photographs of me. We did a Radio 4 program on one of the anniversaries of the Iranian embassy siege. And she's a very dynamic, forceful lady, very easy to get on with, but you do have to cut in if you want to get a word in.
It really made her career, didn't it, the embassy siege? I remember she was she did a really good job, and that was the springboard then, that she became the go-to girl for any kind of conflict abroad and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's taking those moments and those opportunities, and we'll all get moments in our life. One of the things a lot of young people ask me, for in terms of advice for the future, and I say always volunteer, which goes against the military doctrine of never volunteer. Always volunteer for everything. Every time you get an opportunity in life, take it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it first, because you missed your chance. If you have a photograph, get in the front line. If you're in a class and somebody's teaching, get at the front of the class. If you're ever given an opportunity to go on a course which is being paid for by your company or by somebody else, take it. Doesn't matter what it is, take it, because that's free information. That's free power for your future. Always volunteer.
Yeah. Always volunteer, and always sign your name bigger than everybody else.
Mr. Hancock, yeah.
There's one here about SAS books. We'll make this a quickie, because I think we've done the book thing. But do you think that SAS type books have lost of their mistakes? I'm guessing lost a lot of their mystique. And of course, it's worth pointing out here, you've got the SAS type fiction, which is quite popular now, or the kind of, you know, ex-SAS guy turned special agent. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got a lot of classic books, several on my shelf. The best one I read recently was a biography, not an autobiography, but a biography of, memory block. One of the founding fathers of the SAS, the big tough guy that drank a lot.
Paddy Mayne.
Paddy Mayne, of course. Sorry to anyone related to Paddy. That's not me. That I'm not that forgetful. It's just I've lost a few brain cells over the years. But yes, what a character, and died in a car crash. Yeah.
I knew people that served with him when I was in. They were the old boys when I was a young boy, and served with him. They had some stories to tell as well. But thing about books, get back to the question. They have lost their mystique, because there's, you know, like anything, you get too many of them. They all start to follow the same trend, the same path. The big tough hard guy that's fearless, who, you know, chews bricks for breakfast and jumps buildings with a tool, you know, and faster than a speeding bullet. You know, it's and people, I think people just get fed up with that kind of stuff. After a while, it does lose its mystique, and it should do as well. But you know, there's other stuff out there by armed forces guys that delves into different parts of life. It's not just, you know, like yourself, you wrote novels, and there's quite a lot of good writers out there who are ex-soldiers that write novels. There's people who investigate history. You and Southby Taylor, who did Exocet Falklands, ex-Royal Marine, fantastic book, you know, and it's really good because I'm in it. And then there's this one as well, Words of the Wise Old Paratrooper, which is essentially, you know, one of a trilogy which I wrote, which somebody said to me, Robin, you can't sell poetry. So I said, oh, yes, I can. Anybody tells me I can't do something, I can. So I put some poetry into the book, and then filled it up with short army stories, true stories, and a lot of little maxims of wisdom. So Words of the Wise Old Paratrooper. So there are other things you can do. It doesn't all have to be the hard man stuff, you know?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just looking at my shelf here because, as I say, my memory's not great. But the second and third SAS book I read, and we're talking 10, 15 years ago now, one of them was the... you had Bravo 20 as a call sign, obviously, but there was another one.
The one that got away?
No, it was another one that had a call sign. It will be down here. I just don't want to leave you guys and go and look for it. But in a nutshell, it was written by a chap who was very honest at the end when he talked about how when the PTSD caught up with him after the Gulf War, and you know, he was faced extreme challenges for a while. He had a nickname. It will come to me. And the other one, which was incredibly sad, or it wasn't sad reading the book, but it was sad that recently I learned that he'd taken his own life. It was Tom Reed, and the book's called...
that's Nish Bruce, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew Nish since I was 18. Yeah, but Nish had paranoid schizophrenia, and he was on lithium, and he hated being on lithium because he said, I'm not mad when I'm on lithium, but I'm not myself. When I'm on lithium, when I'm off the lithium, at least I'm a sane human being, and I am myself, even though I try to stab people with scissors because I think the devil's coming out of them. But you know, but he was a wonderful, wonderful friend, a wonderful human being, a legend amongst legends, if you like. But his real name was Charles Bruce. Nish was his nickname.
Yeah.
I was in the Paras with him from 18, in the SAS with him till we left. We were bodyguards together for a while. And then he got ill, and that was a real tragedy. And that he left us. My wife used to counsel him, you know, so he used to come around for a chat and discuss his madness. And
is it feel a bit sensitive talking about it, but is it true he jumped out of an aeroplane?
Yeah, he wrote that in Freefall because he he was a free fall expert. He was in the Red Devils free fall team for a while. He became one of the world's top free fallers. There's a wonderful photograph of him free falling naked with 3 naked women over Los Angeles, I think it was. What was the question again?
That when he took his own life, he was travelling back from France in a light air.
He was flying his own aircraft, and he had a co-pilot that he'd been training for a long time. But in his book, he says, "When I choose to die, I'm going to die by jumping out of an airplane without a parachute." So they were coming back from Greenland over the UK, and they got some ice on the wings, and so he took control of the aircraft and got the ice off the wings and got it at a level where it was fine again. And then he looked at his co-pilot, who was a woman, and said, "Are you okay now?" And she said, "Yeah, I've got it now." He said, "Okay," and then he stepped out the aircraft, and he was over Northampton, and his body was found in a field. But that's how he said he was going to kill himself in his book. Free fall was a play on words, because it was about free fall, him being a free fall parachutist, but it was also about his free fall into insanity. That was his play on words. He's a very deep and highly intelligent man. He was 6'1", 6'2", amazing blue eyes, super fit, great soldier. Everybody who knew him really loved him. Yeah.
Gosh. Well, brave way to go. I mean, if you're going to check out, and yes, I mean, it must get to a point in your life where if you are that God, it's a dodgy thing to even talk about, but
you know a funny story about that. He was in Switzerland, and he thought his girlfriend was the devil, and he tried to kill her with a pair of scissors. So he got arrested and put into a psychiatric hospital, secure one in Switzerland. And so some of his friends got a private jet and flew across, broke him out of the psychiatric ward, put him on the private jet and flew him back to the UK. You know, that'd make another good book.
Yes. What shenanigans have the SAS got up to after they've left then, Robin? Because I'm in touch with a chap. He left the Marines. I think he was SBS, and of course, because of all their boat skills, they made ideal candidates for like cross-channel drug smuggling. And they got involved in all that, fast dinghies and ships coming in from blimmin' foreign ports and offloading. I don't know whether it's what drugs it was. I guess that's not important. But he's got one hell of a. I want to get him on the podcast. Actually, he's got one hell of a story to tell. But that kind of fast buck stroke adventure lifestyle is really appealing, isn't it?
Can be. I mean, but it's not. I don't think. I'd speak for myself in this regard. But when I bought myself out of the army in '84, I had a family. I had a mortgage. I needed to earn a living, and my skills, apart from being a paramedic, were those of being a soldier. And so I immediately went out on the bodyguarding market. And everybody imagines it's like the movies being a bodyguard, but it's not. Deter, detect, react are the three main priorities of a bodyguard. You deter something by being visible and preventing it happening. You detect it before it happens. And then if you have to react to it, it's because the first two have failed. So if you're doing a damn good job, nothing happens to your client. There's never a danger. It's never allowed to happen because of your excellent planning and administration and skills. The catch-22 of that is that because nothing happens, the client thinks he doesn't need you. So then he reduces the skill level of his people and the money that he has to spend down to a point where something does happen. And so, you end up with a problem only when you reduce the quality of your people. If you look at the skill factors of people like in Secret Service in the USA, because it's their full-time job to protect the president and his staff, they never worry about that kind of thing. But in the private sector, you're always worried about losing your job and pleasing your boss. And you might say to your boss, okay, sir, I don't think it's advisable to go into this area tonight. It's dangerous. We've been told this. But if he says, well, we're going anyway, you have to go. You don't get control. If he says, you say, oh, look, I need 6 people. He says, well, Robin, I'm only taking you. You have to go. And that, I mean, I was the bodyguard to Rafik Hariri, who's been in the news again recently because of what's been going on in Lebanon. And he was blown up and murdered by people believe the Syrian Special Forces, Syrian Secret Service, with a suicide bomb about 20 years ago now, some time back. And I worked for him for 2 years when he was running to become Prime Minister. It was a genuine threat on him at all times. But, bodyguards cost a lot of money. And, you have to look after him, his kids, his family. And there's only 12 of you. And some of you are on leave as well. So it's never like the movies. Nothing is ever like the movies. If it was, the movies would be really boring.
Yeah, we were lucky. We had Jack English on the podcast. He's a former bootneck, and he's bodyguarded some of the Hollywood celebs like Paris Hilton and Elton John and these sort of names. And I think he said, one of your skills is you got to be like a care worker, social worker, sign the autographs, all these things that we probably don't imagine.
Something I learned doing that job was not to get sucked into pleasing the boss, because in a lot of societies around the world, once you go and get a hamburger, you're a hamburger getter. Once you empty the bins, you're a bin emptier. So if there's anybody out there who's going to be a bodyguard in the Middle East or to somebody important, on your first day, say, I don't do that, sir. I don't do that, sir. I'm here to protect you. I don't carry bags, sir. That's what I do on day one. Because if you don't establish that on day one, you end up being the bag carrier, the hamburger getter, the dog's body. You see it with all sorts of people. The word is no, but you're frightened of losing your job. But you'll actually keep the job for longer that way. Yeah.
That sounds like a scene in a sort of film, doesn't it? Oi, pick it up yourself.
Well, not so much that, but I did have one occasion where somebody said, "Robin, I want a bottle of wine." So I picked up the phone and said, "Mr. So-and-so wants a bottle of wine." I didn't go and get it. That's the difference. My bags are in the car. And I'll walk to the hotel door and I say, get Mr. So-and-so's bags. That's the difference, knowing what your job is and sticking to it specifically and having the confidence to say, no, I don't do that. No, I don't clean up the dog shit.
Yeah, that's the reason a lot of Marines get kind of, what's the word, not disenfranchised, disillusioned. Mm. Is you're this big rough tough commando that's passed the commando course and got your green beret, and then you get told to shift furniture or, right fellas, we've got this job that someone wants us to do, and you're like, really? Not to mention a lot of the waiting around, which is another thing synonymous with bodyguarding.
Yeah.
Right, couple of things here. What have we got? Sean Gowland, just a quick one. Any tips for writing your first book? Yes, get on Amazon and get my completely free How to Write a Memoir. I put everything in there in short about how to get in, get it cracked, and get published.
Well, I would say first thing is you've got to be able to write. And when I mean write, I mean to just sit down and put your fingers on a keyboard or your pen to paper and do it. How do you get to become a runner? Go out and run. How do you become a writer? Write some really, really bad stuff every single day, and every day it gets a little bit better, And when you do decide to write something that's about you, put the feeling into it, put the emotion into it, put the color, It's no good saying I went from A to B. It's not a military report. It's a story, and people want to feel your feelings. People want to see what you saw on the day. You know, they saw the sun shining through the window. You could smell the bacon in the kitchen. You know, your mother walked across the room. She was wearing an apron where she wiped her hands on the front. How you felt. I was welling up inside, but I controlled it. You know, those are things that make a story. But you know, if you want to be good at something, do lots of it. That's what the real secret is.
Yes, exactly. I call that put the reader in the scene, or put him in your shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't. I was reading Hemingway last week, and one of the things Hemingway said is, you have to know everything in the picture, but your reader doesn't, because so long as you do and you're creating a scene, they'll figure it out later on. You don't have to reveal everything at once, and you don't have to explain too much. Another mistake people make is superfluous adjectives. So they do too much describing. You know, the classic is, it was a dark, wet, drizzly, stormy night, and the moon was, it's too many adjectives. It was a dark, wet night. That'll do it.
Yeah. Or it was a miserable night. Yeah. Yes. It's interesting, isn't it? How as an author, you have to reach a certain point of you can call it enlightenment in writing. You have to see what needs to be done, and it's a sense. And when you start, I didn't have it at the start, but I spoke to a few authors, and they looked at my work, about 3 of them, and a couple of them came back and one of them said, "Par it down," and I thought he meant edit like my story out, and I thought, I'm not going to do that. And then when I understood what he meant par it. So instead of like the supercharged, streamlined, sleek black Mercedes, you just say the fast sports car, the speedy Mercedes, or something like this, and
let people's imagination fill in the rest.
Yes.
Ernest Hemingway also said that never show another writer your work, because if it's good, they'll hate it. If it's bad, they'll hate it, but if it's good, they'll hate it even more. Let your wife read your stuff. The first stuff I wrote, my wife read it, and she came back to me and she said, "This is shit." She said, "Where's the colour? Where's the emotion? Where's the life? This is a military report." And so she was, that's what you need.
Exactly. Just to thank you, Danny Young says, "Chris, you're a total inspiration." I know, mate. No.
Others too.
It's I get told such kind things since I've been doing this podcast, and I really appreciate it, guys. I genuinely do. Makes up for all the other stuff I have to hear. Oh, I'm joking. So, dun. Right, come on. Sorry, guys. I said put the questions in capitals. It just makes it easier to see.
There's one here from Sam. What's the most unbelievable thing you've heard happen that you know is true? So I'll tell you that one. I was bodyguarding Rafiq Hariri, and we were taking money into huge sums of money into Beirut to pay off Hezbollah, who were holding French citizens hostages, and we carried millions of dollars in there in cash that went to the man in charge of the Druze militia called Wale Jumbla. And this money was coming from the city of Paris, not the French government. And Jacques Chirac was the mayor of Paris at the time. So he was taking money from Paris to buy the release of these hostages. And he was making a run for the presidency at the same time. So eventually Hezbollah said, "Yeah, we've got the money and we will release the hostages." And then we had to carry the message back saying, "No, don't release them yet, because Mr. Chirac isn't making his run for the presidency for another 4 weeks, so we want you to hold them for another 4 weeks," which they did. He didn't win that election, by the way. Yeah, truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
My strangest story, Robin, I couldn't ever tell anyone. No one's ever been able to verify. It's one of those military rumours that no one's actually ever been able to verify whether it's true or not. But it really wasn't one of the most horrific, horrible things I ever heard, to be honest. But I'll tell you a silly story I did. I went in Hong Kong. I worked in a computer trading company trading the memory chips, which were worth a fortune. It's like they like floated on, almost like on the stock exchange. The price of them would go up and down. And what some of the buyers would do is they'd send a runner, and they would hand carry, let's say, $250,000 worth of chips in a sports bag on the aeroplane, so when they got through customs at the other end, they didn't have to pay any tax on it, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't an unusual thing to hand carry, right? One time we had two clients come into the office, say one from, I don't know, say Taiwan, the other one from Shenzhen or somewhere, right? And the second client didn't have time to wait around for his stock to come in from one of our suppliers. So he went for the airport, and just 10 minutes after he left, the runner from the suppliers rocks up at our office, and he's got this $250,000 worth of DRAM chips. And so the manager said, "Chris, grab the bag, get to the airport, get him before he goes through the gate." So I jumped on the MTR, the underground in Hong Kong, took it out to, it was Kai Tak back then, and I'm in the departure, the bit before you go through the gates, obviously. And I saw the guy, and I ran up to him and I said, "Sir, there's your chips." And he just looked at me, and he said, "But Chris, my chips aren't arriving until next week. Your boss told me that." He said, "Besides, I don't want to risk hand carrying them." And then, Robin, it suddenly clicked. It was the wrong client. It was the other guy. I just tried to give $250,000 worth of memory chips to the wrong person. All he had to say was, "Oh, thanks, Chris." And there would have been nothing I could have done about it. And I probably wouldn't have even realised what the mistake was. Yes. Robin, did you feel like a fish out of water at university? What were your interactions with the younger students like? That's from Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, that was that's a story that I brought home every night to my wife. I was doing English literature with creative writing, and consequently, it's subjects that are very popular with young women rather than young men. So on my course was about 20 people, and 18 were young women between the ages of like 19 and 22, 23, and a couple of lads. And that's difficult because nobody wants to sit next to their grandpa at school. That's the first thing. It wasn't cool. I mean, you've got put into a group to work together on a particular job. That was fine. They would happily work with me, but I'm always early. So I would sit on the third row. Everybody would sit on the second and first. I sit on the front row. Everyone would sit on the second and third, because it wasn't cool. And I had to be very careful if I come into the class at the same time, not to sit next to the same person frequently, because that would have been creepy. So being a grandfather, even a great grandfather now, but I was a grandfather at the time, you know how to interact with young women to a degree, and you know what bugs them. So you can't be 56 years old and trying to be 18 years old. You have to, you have to act your age. But there was also this university indoctrination that tended to be going on with postmodernists. And the faculty was dominated by radical feminists as well, who, because they knew something about my background, immediately pigeonholed me into the right-wing, homophobic, aggressive Nazi sort of sphere. And it took them over 2 years to figure out that they were completely wrong, because they'd already packaged me away in that environment. I was there to learn, and I learned a great deal. But I found a guy doing a master's degree in English called Stephen Davids, and he was the same age as me. So I went out to play with him at lunchtime and did my homework with him. I got my dissertation in about 2 weeks early. I did come across some people at Surrey University who shouldn't have even been there because they couldn't spell. And so why are they doing the course, which opened up my eyes a lot to the general standard of a lot of people that go to university these days. They're wasting their time and they're spending a lot of money and getting into debt, which doesn't do them any favors. If you're academic, if you're gifted in a particular area, choose a subject that's going to be useful to you. Go out there and get a degree. But I was doing English literature, and I was learning about people like Derrida, who is a French philosopher. I'm thinking it's supposed to be English. I would walk into a class about Geoffrey Chaucer and get lectured on female genital mutilation for the first 5 minutes by the professor in charge of the class. And I'm thinking, this is not English literature. So, there's an awful lot of indoctrination going on with young people. And if you want to know why the BBC is so strange and why the military is trying to do all these peculiar things with recruitment, it's because it's been going on for a long time. And these people are now in positions of authority and power and in politics. You want to know why half the people in Parliament are completely nuts and don't live in the same world as you? It's because they had this indoctrination at university 20 years ago. Reality checks are something that they find very, very peculiar. I couldn't fit in. I was a fish out of water. It was a good question, but I worked very hard at it, and I learned a great deal. So I value it.
How old were you, Robin, at uni?
I was 56 and I graduated when I was 59.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was 37, I think, so I guess I was a bit younger than you. My drinking partner was the youngest girl in the class, and she was lovely. Absolutely brilliant musician called Jess. Hello, Jess, if you ever watch this. I doubt you'll be watching a SAS podcast, Jess, but I think I was just that right age to be quite possibly a good role model for some of the younger men as well, and we'd all go out surfing and stuff, and still friends to this day. But I completely agree with you on the brainwashing thing. It's that's a whole nother.
I love being there because I was there for the pure joy of learning. I wasn't there because I wanted a job at the end of it. So I was enjoying the journey while they were looking to the destination. So I did get, and I went home every afternoon as well, because I was only 20 minutes from university. I think an awful lot more students would benefit a lot more as well if they picked the university closest to home rather than one furthest away. Save their parents an awful lot of money.
Yes. Robin, I'm going to ask you to do me a favour because I need to go and get something for Chris. Chris is in the chat under Funked in the Head. I hope that's not a... I don't know what the word is. I didn't do English at uni, I'm afraid. I'm only an author. But there's a question here, and this is going to upset the whole world. What is your opinion on the special boat service? I will be back.
Okay, well, I'll answer that one while you're away, while you can't say anything. Well, you can't press the button and cut me out. I worked with the SBS in Belize. Again, I don't have any issues at all with SB guys. I mean, joining a special boat service was something you could do straight out of when you passed out a marine depot. They're specialists and they're terrific at what they do. During my period, they were amazing divers, canoeists, amazing swimmers. They could get aboard ships at sea by climbing ropes, the most amazing arms. And that's what their job was, and they were brilliant. And I remember being in Belize with Bernie Shrosby, who won the Ironman competition back in about 1981, 82, when it was new. And we were great pals. They taught me to dive. And the first dive I ever did was with the Special Boat Service. And that was in Belize. And we went out with a dive supervisor. And they said, how deep's the water here? And he said, 45 feet. And so my first dive, I went over the edge, followed the anchor chain down. No pool training, no pressure training, no Fenzi training, no nothing. Put the gear on, get in the water and dive down with the Special Boat Service. And we get to the bottom by the anchor. And these guys come up over a ridgeline and start waving their hands at a guy called Bob, who's swimming next to me. And he grabs me by the arm and starts to take me up. And I go, okay, he's in charge. I'll do whatever he says. And we get to 30 feet and we decompress. And then we get up to the surface. And it turns out my first ever dive was 110 feet. And they were next to me like glue for the rest of the day, absolutely petrified that I was going to get the bends and they were going to be in deep, deep doo-doo. But I was fine. But that was my first ever dive, 110 feet with the SBS. Good guys.
Are they all they're cracked up to be then, Robin? Are they?
I don't know. What are they cracked up to be? I think they're the most amazing swimmers, canoeists, divers in the British Armed Forces, to be fair. That's what they're good at. They're good at what they're supposed to be good at. The Marine Mountain Arctic Warfare Cadre, they're amazing at what they do. The difference between SB and SAS is SAS tend to be jacks of all trades. So you're in the desert, you're in the Arctic, you're in the jungle, you're in all sorts of different. You're in the mountains, so you have skills in all these theatres. But when you take a small unit and you specialise in one skill, they can probably say they're the best in the world at that individual skill, without a doubt.
Yeah, and as I'm always saying, everybody in the forces plays a role, and the person that stacks the blankets, it's just as an important job as the guys at the tip of the spear. You're all dependent upon each other. Where Robin does this kind of fascination for young people with who they see these rivalries that sometimes they're there. The Paras tend to have a real rivalry with the Marines, but it's a real one-way thing, because you never hear the Marines compare themselves or rate themselves against anybody. But
I've heard booties, throwing a bit of flack at Paras and Paras right back. But it's a friendly love-hate relationship. It's Paras know they're the best in the world, and Marines think they're the best in the world. That's the only difference, And but if you were to mix and match the two, you wouldn't know a lot of the difference. Except Marines are a little bit more mature.
Oh, thank you, kind sir. Yes, I think I think it's this kind of boys' own thing that we grow up with, isn't it? From war films, and now of course they've got all the games, which is there's a whole nother psychology, sociology going on there with respect to how that fits into the global, how it fits in holistically with what's going on in the world. But yeah, it's I think it's as we said, isn't it? Everyone does a different job, and I couldn't imagine the SBS or the SBS comparing themselves against each other, because like you say, they're both extremely professional in their own field.
Work well together. They work very well together. Everybody loves to think that there's a real conflict there. There never has been. There never will be. Good soldiers respect good soldiers. If you're wearing that beret though, and you don't come up to standard, then you're going to get a lot of flack, and you'll deserve it, because you shouldn't be wearing it if you can't come up to scratch.
So how would Rambo get on in the SAS then, Robin? Would he make the grade?
I think if you go back to the 1960s, the US Green Berets were the best special forces in the world. And they were a very small unit of less than 500. And they were working in operational conditions in Vietnam and other parts of the world. So, and highly skilled multitaskers, mostly with degrees. And they were absolutely awesome. They were so good, though, that President Kennedy came along and said, I want 5,000 of these by the end of the year. And so they followed the president's orders. There were 5,000 at the end of the year, which turned them into an airborne brigade. They stopped being special forces because they were too big again, too many of them, you know. Then they had to invent Delta and SEALs.
Yeah, I think it all went wrong when they let John Wayne in, wasn't it?
There's a lot of, the peculiar thing about publicity is John Wayne has got statues about him around the world as an American hero. But he never actually, during the Second World War, he stayed in California doing films, while most of the other movie stars like Jimmy Stewart volunteered and went to war and then came back again. John Wayne never had a day in uniform, ever. John Wayne looked after John Wayne. He was good at what he did, but he was an actor. And there's a strange thing about people that they confuse actors with the real thing. You know, Robin Horsfall, did you know you look like Burt Reynolds? And say, yeah, Burt Reynolds is the actor, I'm the real thing. You know, there's the difference. John Wayne was the actor. You take someone like Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart went and flew, B-32s? He flew aircraft for 30 bombing missions over Germany before he went back to the USA. You know, there's a man who's, you know, really seen it and done it, a genuine American hero, and went back to making films afterwards. So, yeah, John Wayne, the Green Beret, the film, he's portraying somebody else, but people get confused and they actually start to think that actor is the real thing. Yeah. And it's the same with British people as well. You get somebody in a television series about special forces, and the next thing they're a hard man or a hero, and they're not. They're an actor. That's what they are, and good for them. They earn more money than soldiers,
and they're better at acting.
Yeah,
yeah. We spent some time with the US. So for our American brothers and sisters listening, I was a Royal Marine, so a British Marine, and we spent time in Sicily, so Italy, with our US Marine brothers. And I'll tell you what, just a great bunch of guys. And you could just imagine working with them. It would have just been like that. There wouldn't have been any, there certainly wasn't any rivalry. To us, it was like we just met our American brothers. It really was that. It really was that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, good soldiers work well with good soldiers.
Yes. Right, I've just got to do this, so excuse me a second. I won't be taking all my clothes off, unfortunately, for all the females watching and some of the guys. But I got given this very kindly following an interview I did with, if you want to go to the website, funkedinthehead.com, folks. Did an interview with Chris, and Chris very kindly sent me this hat. So I will try to remember to put Chris's link below. So Chris, if you're watching, thank you very much. I took this camping at the weekend and it did me proud. Now I'm going to put my trucker's cap back on because I'll be sweating like mad. So thank you. There we are, back to normal. Thank you, Chris. Right. So should we take a few more questions? Robin, are you okay for that? How are we doing for time?
Yeah, I'm cool. There's one here about pets. You see that one?
About pets?
Yeah. Robin, did you have any pets while serving in our units that allowed mascots? When I was at Hereford for the first time, I moved in with my girlfriend, who's now been my wife for 42 years. we had a black Labrador called Bamba for a while. And then when we had kids and we moved to a bigger house, we ended up with a pig in the back garden called Horace. We had cats and rats and hamsters and a dog as well. So the house was like a menagerie. And now our kids have all grown up and gone. They've got their own kids. We have a ragdoll, a white ragdoll cat called Betsy, who lives in our apartment here in Prague with us. I like cats. I like cats a lot. I prefer cats to dogs. Dogs are far too much like people. You can't really like them. You know, yeah, I'm very much a man who likes cats. So I've had it. And when you have kids, you have pets. If you don't, yeah, there's something missing in your house, I think.
Yeah, I had a tortoise, Robin, and one day she just stopped moving, and I picked her up. God, what's going on here then? Tried to get her going again, but no, she wouldn't move, and my mum said, "She's dead, Chris."
That's probably just winter.
Oh well, we had all that as well. I had this crazy tortoise. Used to be on the in the southwest. Our local news was the Spotlight News, and my tortoise was always on the Spotlight News because she had escaped from her enclosure, and she'd dig her way under the fence, and they'd find her months later. So she'd be back on the news, and the news would be, "And viewers will be pleased to learn that Liz the tortoise has been found, happily munching away in her neighbour's lettuce patch." Right? But just quickly, she actually woke up early hibernating once and crawled out of her box and fell from the rafters in the garage onto concrete and survived, split all her shell, and she was bleeding from the shell, but she lived through that. And we lived in a place called Horrobridge as a kid, and I used to take her down the local river, and tortoises actually float, believe it or not, quite happily. They're quite fine in water. And it's a good job I taught her how to swim, because that next summer I had a friend over. Obviously we were kids, and that kid put Liz in a bucket of water, right? We couldn't find her for 3 days. After 3 days... Say again?
Did she have shell shock?
She probably had shell shock from falling from the roof. But after this, 3 days later, I went to the bottom of the garden. I thought, just checking that bucket, and bless her, there she was, still swimming away, doing a breaststroke I taught her. So yeah, it was like an episode of Baywatch. That was my Liz. Right, where are we? We're talking about tortoises on an SAS podcast.
Would professional athletes have a chance of passing SAS selection with no military experience? No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't, because all they would have would be fitness. They wouldn't have the skills required to navigate over mountains. They wouldn't have the soldiering experience. They wouldn't have the weapons experience. They wouldn't have the leadership experience. All they would have would be the fitness. So when I was serving, you had to do 3 years regular service before you could volunteer for selection, which meant you were usually at least 21. Most of the average age was 27. You're a soldier. Yeah, you're not an athlete, you're a soldier. But if you look at SAS test week in the first period, which is on the mountains, the 5-day test week is the equivalent of 6 marathons over the mountains with weights between 35 and 55 pounds in 5 days. That's what it's equivalent of in distance. So, no, they wouldn't.
No, yeah, I think the girl, I don't know if I'm allowed to call her a girl, the young woman that was the first to join the Marines she was a professional rower, I believe. Mm-hmm. And everything went quiet on that, and I'm thinking, last we heard she got injured, and I'm guessing that the MOD probably just told the papers to shut up and leave the girl alone, let her just get on with it, because I think they had all that nonsense when Prince Edward joined, and there were paparazzi camped at the gate, and
Well, there is an awful lot of political pressure on pushing somebody through, and they get this idea that you're going to push somebody through simply on the grounds that they're a female, and it's not just about that. It's about the whole package, and if you've got a female that can complete the whole package, live with the guys, shit in a hole, eat the rubbish, deal with the diarrhea, carry the weight, because there's no special arrangements for small guys, so there shouldn't be any special arrangements for small females. And if you can do the whole package, all well and all power to your arm. But an awful lot of them, even if one does eventually pass, will find that they probably don't want to be there anyway.
Yes, exactly. And it does make you wonder if the whole thing is... I know some people that are just firmly against it. Nothing to do with sexism or just because... I don't know. I think they just... Again, it comes back to this political... I don't want to say correctness. It's not that, but it's I don't know. What do we say? Like a move by the left. It's postmodernist values. That's what it is. But if you want women to be infantrymen, make female infantry units so that they're still one gender, and have male infantry units, so that you're not mixing and matching. Because as soon as you mix and match, sex comes into the play. And people become protective of one another. That's my girlfriend, that's my boyfriend, that's my mate, that's my gender buddy, whatever it is. It creates huge complications when people are in a tight environment. And men in my era protected women. That was their role in life. That was their main role in life, was to protect women and children. So if you've suddenly got a female in your unit, you're going to be far more protective of her than you are of the other soldiers in the unit. And there's going to be conflicts. It creates conflicts. It may work amongst officers where their jobs are specifically administrative or leadership, but it certainly doesn't work sit behind a machine gun in the middle of the jungle with the enemy throwing artillery at you. I don't support it. It's nothing to do with sexism. It's to do with what will actually make the best soldiers, the best fighting soldiers. That's me. Yeah, people often ask me, "What am I?" No, well, I mean, this is the thing. We're allowed to talk, and we're not purposely being offensive. It's people say to me, "What do I think of women in the Royal Marines?" I say, "Well, it's a real nasty job if you think about it, killing people. Do you want a mum that took out 5 Argentine machine gunners?" So it's some things suit some people, some things suits others, but there you go.
Even in the Second World War, when the Russians were obliged to bring females into their armed forces, the main combat role that women had was either anti-aircraft fire, firing artillery, or as snipers. But when it came to being assault troops, they didn't put them in that role. And it wasn't because they wouldn't put them in that role. It was because they knew they wouldn't be effective in that role. 80% of people that go to prison are men for violent crime. Men are more aggressive and more naturally violent than women are. I know women can be pretty wild sometimes, but 8 out of 10 is what I'm talking about. Don't. Anyway, what the hell do you want to do that for?
Well, I was on the Marines detachment on Invincible, and either Invincible was the first ship to have women on board, or it was that time in Navy history when it was the first time women were on all the ships. I can't remember. I seem to remember ours was the first ship to have women on, and it changes the dynamic. And I'll say a few things, and I'm only saying this just for the sake of it, education. A apart from the fact it was the first time the Matlows started wearing aftershave down to Scran, so down into the galley, which was quite interesting in itself. But Bonnie was one of the girls. She was the first person in naval history to pass the ship's divers course. So she was all up for it. She joined us on the Marines ran a marathon carrying our full kit around the flight deck one time, and she came and joined us for a few laps of that. To the other side of the fence, you had literally women that were probably, I'm not good with weights, but let's just say 8 stone, possibly 8.5 stone.
Yeah.
And you had chief petty officers that would do that every night in the mess that weighed almost 20 stone, right? Well, what happens when a ship goes to action stations and it's had an exocet through it and everything's burning, everything's red hot, there's smoke everywhere, everyone's in shock, and that chief petty officer is at the bottom of a, I'm going to get in trouble now, I can't remember what the stairs were called, but you know, he's at the bottom of a ladder, and the 8.5 stone Wren is supposed to be able to wrap a fire hose around him and lift him up. I'm not saying I would have been able to do it either, to be honest, but you can kind of see where I'm going with that. On the other hand, she probably handled a radar screen much better than a bootneck did. So yeah, it was interesting. We had this weird situation, Robin, where we were on our way to Barbados, or we were coming back, and we had a Royal Naval officer who was a woman. She was the ship's doctor. I say naval officer because she wasn't a Wren. She was actually a Royal Naval officer. I don't get the difference, but one of the guys, I'm saying it was a guy, I'm not sure if they ever found out who it was, crept into her cabin one night and hit her over the head with a ball peen hammer 8 times. So attempted murder, basically. This is when we're at sea, right? Oh. And yeah, it's just one of those weird, shocking things that I say only happens in the military or in Hong Kong. Right? There's 2 places where some really kind of bizarre scenarios can take place that civilians just probably wouldn't get their head around. And what was a bit strange is they flew the I'm not sure if we're losing our signal, but they flew the SIB on board, so the investigation branch, and we had to reenact that night, which was almost like some kind of bizarre sod's opera. Everybody had to go where they were on that night, but of course I think it was 2:30 in the morning when this attempted murder took place, so most people would have been asleep, so we're all just sat in our mess deck, and the I can't remember who it was that they got to narrate the murder mystery. It was like a murder bloody mystery night. The person's on the tannoy going, and now the murderer is creeping down B passageway. He's now just past the naffy, right? You're trying to go out your mess deck to take a leak, and there's some blooming matlow who's been put on guard to make sure nobody is not where they're supposed to be. And like, what are you doing? I need a piss. All right, go on then, but be quick, right? You don't have a pee. Rush back to your mess deck. And in the end, they narrowed it down to a jilted stoker, but they couldn't. I don't think any charges were ever sort of pressed. But yeah, how bizarre. So
oh, how bizarre.
Not blaming females on ships for that, but I'm just saying that did crop. It would be a shame to lose it now.
Yeah. Coming back, it's clicked on for a second there.
There we are.
There you go.
I think we're back. Sorry about this, folks.
Yeah, so maybe.
Yeah. So, friends at home, we're going to take a couple more questions. Or Robin's going to take a couple more of your questions. I am aware we're starting to get technical issues. I should have put 50p in a meter. Right. Are we good again? I think so. Gosh. Yes. Robin, you thought the Iranian embassy had, false starts and technical issues. So wait to try and run all this technology.
Everything starts with a plan.
And then it goes out the window. Right. Put another quid in the meter. Thank you, Q400. Have you killed someone? No, but I will do after tonight. Did you serve with Eddie Stone?
He was in the SS at the same time as me, but in a different squadron. So we may have known each other's faces, but we didn't do it. I never worked with him. Never.
Yeah, he's done a bit of TV work, hasn't he? He seems to have kind of done the circuit, so to speak.
Yeah. I did a lot of TV work maybe 15 years ago when I lived in London. It was very easy for me to get to Sky, but most of the TV work I've done has been, political and serious stuff rather than entertainment stuff. I've done a few documentaries, obviously the famous BAFTA-winning award film, documentary, which was SAS Embassy Siege, made by Louise Norman and Peter Taylor. That is, if people want to know about what happened on that day, that is the best and most accurate portrayal of that incident that ever happened, that was ever made. It is really excellent. There was me on it, Tom McDonald, John McAleese, and it was the first time any of us had spoken about it, and it was 25 years later. And it really is very, very well made and very well put together. So if people do want to know the true story, it's pretty much there in an hour and a half documentary. It's very, very good.
Yes. Was it fairly recently, like in the last five years? Was that the one? No.
It was. This was made in 2003. 2003. It's called SAS Embassy Siege, made by the BBC. There are excerpts from it on my Facebook page, Robin E. Horsfall, and there's even a cutting from it on wiseoldparatrooper.co.uk on there. But a lot of the good stuff is on YouTube in little segments. There was a movie made a few years ago which was absolute pants. Got nothing good to say. They say nothing about it really, which may have been what you were thinking of.
Yeah, no. There was one. I'm pretty sure Trevor Locke was in it. Was that the same one?
Yeah, that's right. Trevor was there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just that I saw it recently. That's probably what.
It comes around on national TV once in a blue moon, but they've cut it down to 60 minutes now. If anybody ever wants to see the whole thing, let me know. I can send it to them in 10-minute sections.
Yes, I'm sure there's probably a way around finding the whole thing in this day and age. I'll be looking into that. All perfectly legally, of course.
Of course.
Right. I've got a great question to finish on. It's from Ross Duffin. Hello, Ross. Thank you for supporting the podcast. By the way, folks, more and more of my videos are just getting demonetized and it's getting ridiculous now. I did a wonderful chat about veteran suicide the other day, i.e. how to prevent it. It was in the water mitty. You know I'm not all into this water mitty thing, but I've done some work around that. All I did is try to put, the mental health story across in this podcast, and it's got demonetized. And when sometimes they give you feedback about why your podcast gets demonetized. Not often, but sometimes they do. So I clicked the feedback button, and it said excessive profanity. Right. That means basically the C word, and it's just ridiculous because, yes, I have got a potty mouth, but it's not that much of a potty mouth that it's going to upset people over the age of 16, which all my videos are set to. So anyway, so if you can support us on Patreon is what I'm trying to say, friends. It's only £2 a month. You get a free VIP invite to my annual chat. Come and meet me. We can have some photos. We can go out and do some sport or something. I'll do a bit of a talk about what I've been up to over the last few years. You get all my memoirs for free in ebook form. And I do a bit of life coaching and sort of behind the scenes updates. We all get together and have a Zoom chat, and it's really nice. So sorry to Robin, I'm just plugging my trying to pay my bills basically. But the last question there we go. Get them
This
all
is
out.
the last words of the wise old paratrooper.
Yes.
Last question.
Where was I? Yes, Ross. What is diversity like in the SAS? Are there many Gurkhas, blacks, Asians, Commonwealth, etc.?
There are a lot of human beings in there. We had lots of guys from Fiji. We had black guys. We had. I remember there was one Gurkha that got in there after I left. But I mean, when you were in airborne forces, especially, colour was pretty much irrelevant. It had no place or say, or everybody got insulted about something. Your curly hair, your big nose, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too, whatever it was, everybody had a nickname. But diversity wasn't a word that was even used during my period of service. You just were what you were. You were a human being. So, those sort of questions often have some kind of strange postmodern agenda to them. I'm not saying this person did, but
No.
Somebody. I was teaching children karate up in North London, and the local authority came and asked me to fill in a diversity form, identifying the ethnic history of each of my students and what the numbers were. And I crossed them all out and put human at the bottom. I refused to do it, and I still refuse to do it. People are people. My wife's mixed race. My kids are mixed race. I think there's far too much use of race as a political weapon, and there are a lot of situations in the current world where we should deal with problems of people being abused because they're being abused, whatever the reason. Whatever the reason somebody's being abused, it's wrong. And if you want to identify it to the colour of their hair, or the colour of their skin, or the accent that they speak, then it doesn't change the crime. The crime is that you're abusing an individual. I think there's too many people using it as a weapon to gain some kind of dominance over another group in a reverse psychology way. Another place where I can probably take cover and get a lot of flack. But if you're a decent human being and you try to be a decent human being, you treat people decently, then you shouldn't have too much to concern yourself about. And if you say something and you don't intend it to be hurtful or insulting, then it's the intent of what you say, not whether you use the wrong word. And get away from what the word is and get back to what the intention is. Soldiers and people who live in institutions together insult each other in the crudest way very often, and it's meant as a form of friendship. So that's I think I've said enough on that.
Yeah. Just out of interest, so Robin, do you, I mean, obviously times change, but do you recall many Gurkhas trying out for selection?
Yeah, there were a few that came down. they weren't good enough. I worked with the Gurkhas when I was in the Paras and did heavy carries, and my experience of them was that they weren't fit enough. They couldn't carry the weight. They have special teams that they were usually Sherpas that enter competitions on their behalf and win those competitions with races over the mountains. But as soldiers, I think I think that they're as good as the average other soldier, really. But they're not particularly outstanding in any way. Those that came along, and as I say, one did pass. He was obviously clearly good enough and outstanding enough, and he was probably a Sherpa, you know. But yeah, they're a group of soldiers left over from our empire past, who majority don't speak English, so it's very hard for them to coordinate with other troops on the ground. They're okay, but they're not special. I don't believe they're special.
Yeah, and the Asian thing is interesting because as I sit here now, I actually cannot remember, other than obviously when I was in Hong Kong, because part of the British Army in Hong Kong is local Hong Kong residents. But I'm talking now in the UK, I don't remember a single Asian face. In fact, the only Asian names were nicknames given to the English lads that just happened to look a bit Asian. I don't remember many Asians, Robin, do you?
Yeah, one of my good friends, even today, his mother was Chinese and his father was Scottish. You know, so we used to always say he was a Gurkha in disguise. You know, we had a few Pakistani guys and Indian guys in the Paras. But the thing about the Paras is they were a national regiment, so they came from all over the country. Whereas if you got a regiment that was based in Birmingham, like, you know, you would get a lot of black guys in that regiment. But the Paras had everybody from everywhere. So, you know, we had guys from all over the place, which made our diversity rather more broad than most other regiments in the British Army. I mean, the Guards never got a black person in the Guards until about the 1990s. That was the first time, you know. So there were, but, you know, again, you know, it's getting back to this learning to treat everybody at first as a human being. And if you don't like them, it's because they're an asshole, not because of any other reason, you know, or maybe just because they don't like you. But treating people as people. And I'm not trying to be holier than thou with that. There are people that I don't like from various different ethnic backgrounds, but it's not because of their ethnic background.
Yes. And of course, when I was on ship, you had the Chinese laundrymen, which was quite a bit of naval history that goes back to obviously our ties with Hong Kong. So civilians that joined the British Navy ships to do the laundry. And
Yep.
They did a bloody good job of that laundry.
They lived on. Yeah, you see, you were very lucky you had someone to do your laundry for you.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing, you know, you have to pay a lot of money for as a civilian, someone to come in and do your washing and yeah, look after you. But no, these guys did a great job. In fact, there was one funny story where one of the Matlows was out fishing on the flight deck, and he was chuffed to bits. He caught an octopus. He couldn't believe he caught this octopus. So he ran up to the Chinese mess deck all excited, and he knocked on the door. And we used to know all their names. I can't remember now, but it would have been something like Li Feng. He said, "Li Feng, I've brought you this octopus." And Li Feng went, "Fuck off, we ain't eating that."
That's it, demonetised again.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Robin, it's been an absolute pleasure again. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us, answering all the questions. I'm going to put all your links below. Also a link for Chris's website, Funked in the Head, so people can check that out. Obviously you're going to come and join us again, Robin, I hope.
Yeah, it's great, mate. You give a bloke like me a chance to talk about himself for 3 hours. What can go wrong?
Yes. No, it's fascinating. And again, you know, I think I might have said this last time, but what was I? I was 10 years old. I remember watching the BBC News and the embassy siege like it was yesterday, and it was one of the most eye-opening, iconic moments, I think, in most of our lives, really. And gosh, how little did I know back then that here I would be speaking to a legend. I always tell people, my life is just brilliant. it you know, you make your choices, and when they come good, and at times like this, I'm just absolutely honoured. So thank you so much. I'm just gonna play us out, so if you just want to hold the line a sec, Robin.
Okay.
To our friends at home, massive love to you all, big respect. As I said, please consider joining the Patreon just to help me do shows like this and keep doing them. Your support is amazing. Massive thank you to Brooke Benson for helping with the technology today and doing the chat. That's it. I've said enough. I'm going to play you out. See you next time. Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.